Positive outlook equals positive outcome. Hi, I'm Steve, your agony uncle, and welcome back to my channel where we discuss things all mental health related, talk about tips and tricks of ways you can hopefully improve your life and the way you see things. So today let's talk about positive outlook equals positive outcomes. I would like to introduce you to somebody I've been following on YouTube for about 15 years now. His name is Briansredd. You may not be familiar with him unless you're in the music DJ circle. Brian's been DJing since the early 80s, and as I say, I've been following him for just over about 15 years now. He's now in his early 50s, but next week will mark 10 years since he had a major stroke. Brian is still DJing. He still has a positive outlook on life. But let's go back 10 years. Brian was driving home one day after work, and he had what he described as a migraine type headache and started seeing flashing lights. So he went home and unfortunately went straight to his bed because he just thought it was like the flu or a migraine. When he woke up in the morning, he couldn't see and he couldn't speak, and it turned out that he'd had a major stroke, which has left Brian paralysed on his right hand side. His right arm is now completely paralysed. He can now walk, but he walks with a limp. He sort of drags his leg behind him. He has to wear a brace on it. And life is really a struggle for Brian, but he's back DJing. It took him a long time, but one thing Brian has always had is a positive outlook on life. Brian constantly says the reason he's made the progress he has is because he's focused on his abilities, not his disabilities. As I say, in the early days, Brian couldn't see and he couldn't speak. And I'm sure mentally and physically it would have been a great struggle for him. But Brian manages to do what he's always done, and that's keep a positive attitude. Brian's able to go back and earn a living for himself and his family doing what he loves. Yes, his life has changed. Yes, he's had to make adjustments. But one thing he's maintained throughout all of this over the last 10 years, and still does to this day, is a positive outlook on life. Brian hasn't been working for a year like the rest of us. Until the pandemic, I was also a mobile DJ, and that's why I was following Brian. But last weekend, he had his second COVID jab, the Medina, I believe it was, and the very next day, he went out and did his first wedding gig as a mobile DJ for over a year. Now that was a challenge enough for anybody after a year getting back into it. Brian loaded his truck up himself, he unloaded himself, set his gear up, did a full night's work, packed it away, drove home. He was absolutely exhausted, but he managed to do it. And I believe he managed to do it because of his positive outlook and focusing on his abilities and not his inabilities. I think we can all learn a lot from Brian. I really do take my hat off to him and I salute him. He's a phenomenal guy, an amazing DJ. And he started his YouTube channel just really to share his knowledge and give people tips and tricks on how to set up a mobile disco business and how to deal with people and music and all that. And he still does that on a daily basis. But moreover, I respect the man because of focusing on his positives and not his negatives. I really do think we can learn a lot from Brian. Check him out on his, I'll try and put a link down below. Check him out on his YouTube channel, even if you're not interested in mobile DJs and PA systems and lighting and all that. Just his attitude is really refreshing. So once again, I salute you, Brian. He knows, as I always say, if you don't take the time to look after yourself, you can't look after anybody else. Until next week, thank you for joining me.